very much, Dan, for that introduction. It's an honor and a privilege to have been invited to speak here tonight. And when Jerry called and asked if I'd speak, I told him I'd be honored to do so, but I was surprised to have been asked. For I know the resources the CDC has, and I said, how'd you ever select me? I said, well, we have a committee. And our committee had on it to ask Dolly Parton, or Rush Limbaugh, or Toby Keith. I said, well, how'd you ever select me? I said, well, we thought Dolly Parton would be too entertaining, but Rush Limbaugh might be too controversial. Toby Keith charges a large speaking fee, so we decided just to ask Judge Ellwood, for he's none of the three. Now, the things that we're going to do this evening are to wish the United States Marine Corps a happy 239th birthday. We're going to touch on Veterans Day. And we're going to be out of here in time that Art Clemenson can see the Ohio State Buckeyes. So, first thing, 239th birthday. Let's take just a few minutes and think about what it's meant to this country to have a branch of the armed forces called the Marine Corps. Before I do that, I'll ask all Marines. Notice I didn't say ex-Marines, because I know once a Marine, always Marine. I'd ask them all to stand or raise their hands if you're unable to stand, so we can recognize them. Thank you. Now, I'd like the youngest Marine in the room also to stand up so you can recognize her. (1775) Continental Congress resolves that 2 battalions of Marines will be raised for service with the fleet. A battalion somewhere between 500 and 800 men at that time, so it'd be about 1,000 to 1,600. Started long tradition that we celebrate this evening. First landing on a hostile shore was when the Marines, under Captain Samuel Nicholas, captured New Providence Island, the Bahamas, from the British. He celebrated his first Marine Commandant. However, after we gained our independence from England, our forefathers apparently thought wars in this country were over. So they disbanded, demobilized, what it was called, both the Navy and the Marine Corps. July 11th, 1798, President's John Adams. And uniquely, he was the person who recommended we have Marine Corps in the Continental Congress to begin with. But in 1798, he signs a bill, establishes United States Marine Corps as a permanent military force. Since that date, Marines have participated in all the wars of the United States. As we know, very often they're the first to fight. Now, let's come to our lifetimes. History of the Marine Corps could be summarized, I think, with the words Guadalcanal, a stop in Vietnam, and Fallujah. Talk about Guadalcanal. August 7th, 1942, America's first offensive in World War II. Marines are the first. What Guadalcanal stood for in 1942, 1943 to this country is a special thing. that the United States could defeat the Japs, for they'd never had a military defeat prior to that time. Andy, you get this close to me, you're liable never to hear again. Our good friend Andy.
Hi, everybody, hi. I say hi. Hello, Marines.
Thank you, Andy. 1942, Guadalcanal. History of elite troops throughout history have demonstrated that they can face overwhelming odds. Let's talk about the odds at Guadalcanal. It should have been called Operation Shoestring. It was the idea we had to do something. Didn't have the equipment, didn't have the ships, but we had what's called oftentimes the Old Guard. At Bastogne, the 101st Airborne was surrounded for 8 days. That's a central event, World War II in Europe. The Marines at Guadalcanal were cut off. The Navy had to leave them. Very few airplanes at Henderson Field for 4 months. In Guadalcanal, 4,123 Americans lost their lives, mostly Marines. We know our history. We should never forget it. Marine Corps is known for raising the flag, Iwo Jima. The history of World War II starts with Guadalcanal. Iwo Jima, 25,851 Americans lose their lives. Okinawa, where this man was wounded, 49,151 Americans die. Yet, it was the Marine Corps that took the first step back. My generation, Vietnam. Marines were the first there, the last to come out. 13,091 Marines killed in Vietnam. 88,594 wounded. That's more than World War I, World War II put together. 57 medals of honor. But we come to our times. In our times, we are now faced with what's called Islamic terrorists. We first met them at a place called Fallujah. They couldn't be dug out. What was our response? Send in the Marine Corps. Even the Islamic terrorists know the Marines. But we never know the life of any soldier, any Marine, any airman, any man or woman that served in any of the military branches except through the lives of individual veterans. So I'll tell you about 3 Marines I've known. First one's Dan Fabro. Dan Fabro's the judge down in Morgan County. Went to law school with him. Now in law school, they make it about like if you're back in grade school. If your name's Ellwood, that's E, Fabro's F. So always sit to my right. Dan, like many of the Marines that I've met, if he held an opinion, it was strongly held. So I had to listen to the law school professor in one ear and Dan Fabro in the other and decide which one I was going to write in my law school exam. And throughout law school, he'd always tell me, or we found out our service tours of duty had overlapped, he'd always tell me, well, Ellwood, you ain't Marines yet. That's what he told me the acronym for Army stood for. Ain't Marines yet. A while back, we had our prosecuting attorney assigned down to that county. If they have a conflict, the prosecuting attorney is the other prosecuting attorney from the county goes down. Our prosecuting attorney goes down, he comes back, he says, Judge, don't want to do this. For judges are about like, I guess, colonels. He said, I've got a note here. Judge Favreau told me I had to give to you. I said, well, that's fine. I'll read it. I opened it up and it said, Dear Ellwood, ain't Marine yet. Second Marines, Bob McCoy. Bob McCoy's my court staff. He's a bailiff. He's a high school classmate. I'm a Vietnam era veteran. Bob's tour of duty in Vietnam, mine overlapped. We didn't know that till we came home. Lieutenant in the police force here in Cambridge for years. You come to court, you're met by either Bob Hollins or Bob McCoy. Smiling faces, the bailiffs out in the hallway. You don't bring your firearms, you don't bring your weapons. You bring a good attitude, they'll properly greet you. And next, I'd like to tell you about Chad Gerlach. Dan saw this earlier. Grandson. They have Marine in the family. After generations of back to the Revolutionary War of people in the United States Army. So Dan, see, there is still hope for this country. On October 20th of 2010, Annette and I neglected to introduce my wife, so I'm already in trouble, so you all help me, please. I might not get to watch the Iowa State game when I go home, but I don't do this. I'd like to introduce you to my wife first as I start. Annette, would you please stand up to be recognized? We have traveled down to a place called Paris Island, South Carolina. Can I see a show of hands? How many have been down there? Yeah, there's one show of hands, two show of hands, yeah. Well, this is the graduation booklet. The Marines, the few, the proud, earned, never given, always faithful. Graduation of companies K and O from Paris Island. We were proud to open up the book, see Platoon 3086, our grandson, honor graduate. Wow. That means you get promoted to the high rank of PFC and a little more pay. The Marine Corps does it right, and does it well, and here's the Marine Corps values. Honor, quality that guides to exemplify the ultimate in ethical and moral behavior. I might have a lot less work in court if everybody followed that. Courage, moral, mental, and physical strength to do what's right. And commitment, the promise to pursue a completely worthy goal or objective or mission. Honor, courage, and commitment, where the transformation begins.